Yes, hello once again, and welcome back to your number one and favourite classic dirt bike TV channel, where we do our very best to try and showcase more of those old school vintage race bikes from the 60s, 70s and 80s. Now, again, thanks to all of my viewers who have left mainly positive comments on my previous videos. There have been one or two negative comments, but again, that's okay, because of course that's what makes us all individuals, and everybody is entitled to their comments. So we still have one or two race events to cover before the end of the 2022 racing season, and of course in between times we'll be bringing you more of these vintage race bikes for you to take a look at here on my channel. So if you haven't already subscribed to CDB TV, then now would be quite a good time to do that, so that you don't miss out on any future videos that I post. So right now we're going to take a look at a bike that I came across while I was attending the Drumlandrig Off-Road Festival in June of this year, and this is another one of those fantastic European bikes that also became popular over there in the USA. So without any further delay, let's jump in and take a look at this 1974 360 at Bultaco Pursang. Now, it's said that very few off-road motorcycles made the impact that these Spanish-made Bultacos did on the motocross stage during the early 1970s, and when American legend, the late Jim Pomeroy, took what was basically a stock production 250 Bultaco and entered it into the 1973 Spanish Grand Prix as a privateer entry, and he won the 250 class outright. Then sales of these Pursangs the following year went through the roof. Now, Bultaco claimed at the time that these 1974 360s were as near as damn it to a carbon copy of the Grand Prix winning machine that Pomeroy rode to that famous victory the year before, and it was because of that iconic Pomeroy victory that both Europe and the USA just couldn't then get enough of these very light and nimble European race bikes in the years that followed. Now, you've probably already guessed that our featured bike here isn't a fully stock 1974 model, as it does have a few replacement parts that are certainly different from the 1970s originals. But many of the important parts, like the frame, the motor, the front suspension, and loads of the other smaller items, are all still from the original 1970s design. Now, our bike here belongs to Scottish racer Derek Faulds, and this particular bike of Derek's took him to the Scottish Championship title in 2017, and a title that, of course, Derek was well worthy of during that racing season, as he rode this Bultaco superbly throughout the year. Although I have to say that since winning this coveted number one plate in 2017, Derek really hasn't done a lot of racing since then, due to an increasing workload in his day job, and then of course the dreaded COVID came along and really put paid to any racing for the following 2 years. So Derek then used the downtime to give his beloved race bike a bit of a strip down and freshen up, and this is basically the first time that the bike's been seen since its rebuild, when it was on display in the concourse marquee at the recent Drumlandrig Off-Road Festival weekend in June of 2022. And so as we take a look at this 360 two-stroke Bultaco motor, which for their time was an absolutely superb little piston port engine with no fancy things like reed valves or power valves to improve their performance. These Bulto motors were certainly old school race engines, which it's claimed put out around the 39 horsepower mark, but of course that was Bultaco's brochure claim in '74, although riders will tell you that the true figure was slightly different. Now, back in 1974, I'm pretty sure that it would have been an Amal concentric carburetor that would have been bolted onto this motor back then, although those older Amals weren't exactly the best carburetors of their day, and riders in time did tend to swap them for these much better Mikuni items, which of course were much better quality and had more scope with regards tuning and then fitting smaller or larger jets for improving performance. And again, of course, we have Bultaco's forward folding kickstart, which was a bit of a trademark on these Spanish Bultaco engines, and to get that 360 motor fired up, it wasn't exactly the best of angles to get a decent kick at the engine, but once you mastered it, the motor usually came to life either at first or at second kick. Now, another trademark of these Bultaco engines, and these alloy casings in particular, were that they usually came straight from the Spanish factory, all nicely polished and almost like a chrome finish on the casings. But as you can see here, it looks like Derek's opted to go in a different direction with his particular engine, and it looks like he's had the casings vapor blasted rather than going for the full blown polished alloy look. Now, it's certainly not surprising that Derek's fitted a replacement exhaust system on his Bultaco racer, because these underslung race pipes did suffer quite a bit of abuse on the racetrack, and even today you'd be very hard pressed to find one of these older Pursang racers that still have their stock race pipe intact. But there's certainly no shortage of suppliers if you need an upgraded replacement, and although this is not the original pipe, it's probably better than the '74 original. But as I said, most of the steel chassis parts on this bike are the stock items, although again Derek's fitted these much better and wider foot pegs just to help give his feet a little more support over those skinny Bultaco originals. And again, as you'd expect, during the bike's refurbishment, the Bultaco's frame was also stripped of the older silver colour and then given a brand new paint job just to freshen it up. But as I remember, I'm pretty sure that these 360s did have a bore of around, I think it was 85mm and a stroke of about 64mm. And as a European two-stroke motocross power plant goes, these Bultacos were very quick and reasonably reliable, and they also had a 5-speed gearbox and your usual wet multi-plate clutch. And if you were looking for a powerful flickable race bike to throw around a racetrack in the 1970s, then these Bultacos certainly fitted that bill perfectly. Although I have to say, it's still good to see that Derek's still got the bike's original beater front forks on his Pursang, with a pair of those plastic guards there as well, just to protect the lower stanchions from the stones and other debris that it would encounter on the racetrack. And again, old school drum brakes, which as I remember, I think had chrome facings inside the hub, which was a bit strange with regards friction for the brake shoes, although these small diameter stoppers weren't exactly the best brakes, but they were certainly the braking technology of that 1970s era. And once more at the rear of Derek's Bultaco, we have a pair of relatively modern style rock shocks fitted here, but back in the day I think these again would have been a pair of pretty basic beater shocks. But these rock shock units are a world apart from those old beater suspension systems. But I suppose as the years go by, technology moves on, and it's certainly no surprise that Derek's opted to have these much better suspension units on his old Bultaco race bike. Now, by now you've probably already guessed that these wheels aren't the original alloy rims that would have been fitted to this bike back in 1974, and here we have a pair of new gold anodized alloy Tagasago wheels, which have been fully rebuilt with brand new heavy duty spokes onto those Bultaco hubs. Now, whether you think that these gold coloured rims don't have the same look as the original polished alloy ones, but for me personally, I think that these gold rims look great on this bike, and of course the most important thing is it's much better than fitting a pair of those hideous black wheel rims that now seem to have become the latest trend on these older vintage race bikes. Now, they say that to keep the bike's overall weight down to the minimum, that Bultaco normally used fiberglass on most of their bikes' fuel tanks, body panels and mudguards way back in 1974. And to be fair, I can't really tell if this particular fuel tank is the original fiberglass item or possibly even a plastic style replacement. But because these parts were made originally in fiberglass, they were certainly easily broken and not cheap to either repair or even replace. But there's certainly no mistaking that this rear mudguard is a modern plastic replacement, which isn't such a big deal, as I expect that you can no longer source the older brittle fiberglass items anyhow, so opting for these tougher, harder wearing plastic parts certainly makes sense when you're building a bike to race it and not as a showpiece. And again, because these Bultaco racers never really had a lot of suspension movement at the back, you certainly needed a reasonably comfortable seat just to help your backside soak up some of those big bumps. And as far as I know, this seat did very little to alleviate that problem, and that's another reason that you also saw many older Bultaco motocrossers standing up on the pegs during a long race moto. And so as we move on to the business end of Derek's Bultaco, you can see that many of the original controls have been swapped, and we have a pair of modern style Pro Taper 7/8 handlebars here, and Derek's also improved the bike's ride height at the front by adding these alloy bar risers that have lifted the handlebars substantially to suit Derek's own personal posture and of course his riding style. Again, a decent throttle gasser here to help control the alleged 39 horsepower that these 360s were supposed to pump out, but those levers and their covers and those rubber grips are all very good quality, and for super safety we've even got an engine kill switch as well, just in case we have any problems with that Bultaco motor and it needs to be shut down in a hurry. But overall, even although Derek's bike here is not a fully original Bultaco machine from 1974, 1974. All of the upgrades and improvements that have been made to the bike were all done just to try and make it run and handle that little bit better when it's raced on the racetrack, because after all, this is not a show bike, and it's just that Derek, during his downtime, took the opportunity to upgrade and make some improvements to his bike for the coming racing season. And it was really only because of the torrential rain that was falling on Drumlanrig Castle that day that we moved inside to this marquee tent for shelter that we managed to grab these video clips and pictures of Derek's Bultaco. Although without doubt, in the mid-1970s, these Bultaco Pursangs were hugely popular, not only in Europe alone, but overseas as well, and in places like the USA. And as I said, when Jim Pomeroy won the Spanish 250 Grand Prix in 1973 on a privateer Bultaco, the following year, the Spanish factory just couldn't build these bikes fast enough to keep up with demand. And although our example here isn't a fully blown stock bike from 1974, it's still great to see and hear one of these still racing and winning at the sharp end of motocross. Well, there you have it. That's Derek Faulds, quite nice looking 360 Bultaco Pursang from 1974. And as I said, not a fully original race bike from that year due to the one or two more modern parts that have been fitted onto it. But nevertheless, a nice example of one of those Spanish European Bultacos. So coming up in my next video posting, we're going to take a look at yet another iconic machine that I came across at this very same Drumlanrig Castle event. So in my next video posting, we'll be checking out this nice 1981 CR250 Honda Elsinore. Now, if you're up to speed with your Honda models, you will already know that these 81 250s were Honda's first ever liquid-cooled two-stroke race bike. So we'll be checking out this lovely machine when we return for my next video posting here on CDB TV. But until then, everybody, continue to be safe and well out there when you're riding those old vintage race bikes, and I hope to see you back here again very soon so we can talk about more of these old school vintage race bikes right here on your #1 and favourite classic dirt bike TV channel.